My name is Sanjay Bijrawat. I am part of our global IoT business development team. I'm based out of Seattle. Now, some of you might have been expecting to see Mark Ralph up here today because he was supposed to be the speaker. But Mark, unfortunately, became indisposed just 2 or 3 days ago, and I've stepped in here to pick up all of his reInvent engagements. So it's going to be me today, and so joined by me, if I can see him probably, is Mike Margolis. Mike is one of our customers. Mike is he's VP of Cloud Engineering at a startup company in Israel called Weisberger, which is now part of the AB InBev brewing family. And if you all will stick through my presentation and wait for Mike's portion of the presentation, you'll get to hear about a topic that is very near and dear to all of our hearts, beer. So with that, what I want to do today for the next 20, 30 minutes is to help you understand how IoT services from the edge to the cloud are being used by a lot of our customers across many industries to digitally transform their companies and industries. And the way we think about digital transformation is in 3 sort of buckets. Change what you build, change how you operate, and change how you monetize. Those are sort of the 3 pillars, at least the way we, in AWS IoT, we think about the impact that IoT can have on companies' sort of digital journey. And at the center of all that is data. And that's what we will spend a lot of our time today talking about. And so when it comes to data, what am I talking about? This is, in fact, the core question that we ask all of our customers when we begin the IoT journey with them. And in this case, when I say everything, what we're talking about typically are the key enterprise assets, your key enterprise assets. And I refer to them as the 3 P's and C. People, your products, your processes, and the C are your customers and how they interact with your products. If you knew the state of all those assets, that is, in fact, the Holy Grail, right? And this chart sort of maps pretty well to the 3 P's and the C. The data that the most advanced enterprises that we're working with are collecting you span the entire product value chain, all the way from smart product design to product validation, building the product, shipping it out, getting it into the field. Collecting data from every step of that process and making it available to every other step of the process is a hugely valuable endeavor. And like I was saying, the most advanced companies that we're working with are beginning to work towards that. Obviously, being able to get there entirely is a huge effort, which I don't think anybody has quite gotten to. But yes, that is, in fact, the Holy Grail. And even as you start to begin to collect pieces of that data, you can begin to address a lot of common enterprise scale problems, right? They can be all the way from productivity and the efficiency of operations to energy management to the health and safety of your workers. And the list goes on and on. This is just, a small sampling. And the most important thing is that this can directly impact your bottom line. Your revenue rises, and the costs come down. Typically, it's the cost-cutting side of the equation. I don't know if this thing has a pointer or not. Probably not. The cost-cutting side of the equation, the right side of it, is where most companies begin their IoT journey. These are sort of direct and tangible items, right? Your actual costs. And what you measure, then you can manage. But the revenue side is, in fact, where the true long-term gains actually come from. Entire business models can change. I'll give you an example. You all heard of sort of a company called Michelin, right? A well-known tire company has been selling tires for 100 years. Well, Michelin still sells tires, but in certain markets, they now don't sell tires. They sell tire runtime. And Michelin now maintains ownership of the tires. You maintain ownership of the tire runtime. The tires are now sort of censored to the extent that Michelin knows a hell of a lot more about the tires than you could possibly know. And a new set of tires, land at your doorstep just when you need them. Now, next time Costco has a great deal on Bridgestone, you won't even be moved by that. Michelin, through the approach they've taken with IoT, has cemented the relationship that they have established with you. That's the power of the revenue side, the transformation. I mean, that is an example of a company that is slowly sort of doing transformation. Now, these data elements we've been talking about, they impact all the items that you see over here. There's a lot of business model change that's in fact going on just for the existence of web services, data from mass production to mass customization all the way through. But the last one over there, that's the most important one that we're seeing in the IoT world. Companies like yourselves are no longer selling me just a product. Very often, you're selling me a service. You're selling me a product, but now as a service. A good example of that was the one I just talked about with Michelin. And we'll talk a lot more about business models later on in this conversation. So hopefully, there is no more doubt in people's minds that this data from billions of devices, industrial devices, home devices, commercial devices, is going to provide the lubrication, the fuel to really help your company sort of transform their entire operations. But the flip side of that is that there's also no doubt that this is not going to happen tomorrow. This will take time. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why this digital transformation is not easy. A lot of companies are doing things, and they're making enormous and great headway, but it takes time to see the true impact on their businesses, their enterprises transformation. And we'll talk about why those conditions exist today. Like I was saying, despite all the challenges, a lot of companies are deeply engaged with us. This is a small sampling of our IoT customer universe. Companies on the B2C consumer side, like Philips, iRobot, and our own Alexa team, to commercial companies, B2B companies like British Gas and Trimble and Thermo Fisher, and then obviously the big major industrial like Siemens, Volkswagen, Terex, and Deutsche Bahn. And a lot more companies are working with us to really deeply sort of transform their operations, but they're all at different points in the actual journey. So let's, with this overview, let's go a little bit deeper. And what are our customers doing to really begin to digitally transform their companies? As I mentioned in the beginning, we define digital transformation as an amalgamation of these three broad paradigms. Change what you build, change how you operate, and then change your economic model. Today, let's begin with the first one. Changing what you build, your products. Today, connected products are being built in lots of unique configurations, and they offer very, very unique experiences. They can be products that are completely self-healing. For example, we're working with one of the major sort of telecom companies. They make routers. Routers are pretty inexpensive products, $20, $30, right? Not a lot of margin there. But think about the amount of customer service calls that they actually get. One of our customers told us that the single biggest volume of customer service calls is just to say, my router is not connecting. Now, that's a huge waste of a customer service call, an expensive customer service call. So why couldn't the router be completely self-healing when there's a break somewhere on the connectivity, whether it's at the back end or at the router can run a simple machine learning model that was built in the cloud, you put down into the router, and it self-heals itself. Completely knocks out a huge expense for this particular customer in this case. Then the other big sort of transition happening in the world of connected products is that you can add your functions on the fly. I'll give you an example. How would you like to be able to, on demand, purchase 1 hour of super turbo mode in that beautiful Karma Rivero GT that is being displayed at the ARIA right now, because you happen to be driving down an open highway in Utah, and you suddenly realize, I've got 200 miles of open road here. Just for that 1 hour, I'd like to be able to purchase 1 hour of super turbo mode. You can do that just by a simple over-the-air update that comes into the car. It gives you a small time window. Go have some fun. And by the way, I got to make a sort of shameless pitch here. Please go visit the Karma Rivero, which is in the ARIA Quad. It's running a beautiful car, and it's running 3 demos, machine learning demos, that me and my team actually put into it. So please go visit that car as well. The other part, the other two sort of steps, we'll talk a lot about doing new operations, making a change in your business operations. A lot of companies today are looking to be able to dashboard their entire operations from the start to the finish, be able to see their entire operations, with sensors all the way across. We'll, talk a little bit later about Bayer Crop Science, who we're working with, in the smart agricultural space. They're doing this a lot right now. Being able to see everything, only if you can see everything, can you begin to make so changes and amendments that can actually drive business value for your company. And then we'll talk a lot more about business models as well. So I was talking about Bayer and precision agriculture. This is one of the industries where we're seeing the transformation happening fairly quickly. And it's happening across the board. It's happening in what they build, it's happening in their operations, and it's happening in their business models. And one of the reasons why this is particularly important, if you go to the Bayer Crop Science website, you'll see that the underlying reason why they're focusing so much on digital transformation is because they say 1/3 of all the food that is made in the world every year is wasted. And 40% of that waste, about $750 billion a year, comes from the organized food manufacturing sector, which is where Bayer fits. And when you think about the hundreds of thousands of new mouths that need to be fed every year, you can see why this is a particularly acute problem for this industry and why they're putting a lot of focus on doing the digital transformation right now. Like I was saying, I mean, companies like Bayer are putting a lot of effort. A lot of companies are doing a lot of things that are moving them further down the IoT journey. But if you look at this particular picture up here, if I was to ask for a show of hands, I won't do that here because I can't even see anything right now. But if I was to ask for a show of hands, to ask you all where your particular company's IoT projects are, I wouldn't be surprised if your histogram looks just like this. It takes a lot of corporate patience and perseverance, both of which are generally in short supply in the corporate world, to be able to make this transformation happen. So one of the reasons why we have Mike here today is because his company is in full production. They've actually made that transition. You'll hear him talk about what they're doing today and kind of how they got there. But there are not a lot of companies who've gotten to that point. They may have pilots going, they may have a limited production operation, a division, things like that. Well, one of our customers, Woodside Energy from Australia, has got sort of 10% of the gas operations completely on a digital twin. But they've 90% still more to go. So yeah, people are working their way through. My company has made a lot of headway. And why is this the case, right? I mean, lots and lots of reasons, but I'll talk about a few. One that is particularly so close to my heart is the edge. I mean, I spent a lot of time working on the IoT edge, and the IoT edge is hard. Particularly, the industrial IoT edge is very hard. Actually, the word industrial protocol, it's about like a four-letter word in my world when it comes to industrial IoT. There are probably 400 different disparate types of industrial protocols that your machines spit out data in. Out of those, 180 of them or so are absolutely mainstream. We have to convert, or rather we have to work with you to convert those protocols, 180 to 400 protocols, at millisecond speed, moving sort of high volumes of data rapidly without losing data into OPC UA or MQTT protocols, which are the ones that our cloud systems can actually absorb. That's hard work. That's taken a lot of time. And you got to do this, like I was saying, very, very carefully, not to lose data, not to have privacy issues on PII, not to have a security flaw. And then to be able to manage that kind of volume of data, that's not the core competence of a lot of companies. On top of that, having your performance now measured on the basis of data, that's kind of a scary thought too. So the culture change within companies to make this transformation happen, it's a slow process. And because of that, it actually takes time. And business models change, and it's actually a threat to the traditional ways of doing things, right? So all this stuff does take a bit of time. So with that, giving you an overview of the three pillars, let's go a little bit deeper into each of the pillars. So we talked already about products that can do interesting things. I mean, our own Alexa products, as you've seen, a lot of you use our Alexa products. The Echo series, they do a lot of sort of unique experiences now. Our partner companies and our customers like iDevices and iRobot, they're on the cutting edge of doing things as well. I talked about the fact that you can update the function, the abilities of these products out in the field. You can make them self-healing. So those are the big sort of hallmarks of the next generation of products companies are building. But one of the things that's making that possible is this edge to cloud, back to the edge nature of modern IoT. Get data up to the cloud, build machine learning models in the cloud, deploy them back to the edge, whether you have connectivity or not, the machine learning models operate. They pick up sort of errors and anomalies, push those back up to the cloud, retrain the model, push the model back. The product continuously improves over time, by itself. I mean, that is now possible, and it's possible into small products, bigger products. We've got a service now, which you may have heard of, Amazon SageMaker Neo, which makes it possible to take a machine learning model and its entire machine learning framework and be able to shrink that down by 1/10 to a 100 in its memory footprint and push it down to a small device on the edge. That's how we're pushing more and more. The biggest trend going on in the world of IoT today is the transition to take the best of the cloud and push it down to the edge. So you can have the same thing happening at the edge, so you don't have to spend lots of bandwidth and money to store data up in the cloud. You do as much as you can at the edge. And that's what's making it possible to do these kinds of new products. Now let's talk about how the biggest heavy lifting that's going on is in the world of how companies are using data to change their operations. And we've talked now for quite a while about the importance of data. But the dark underbelly of industrial data in particular is that many companies like yours have been collecting data for a long time, 10 or 15 years. But that data is largely untapped for the purpose of digital transformation. That's because this data sits in local on-premises repositories like SCADA systems and historians, and never sees the light of day in a combined way across assets, across geographies, across divisions, across the entire enterprise. So lots of data, but it's not really tapped. And that is a complete waste, a huge wasted asset, which you have to figure out a way to tap into. And so, I hit the wrong button here, sorry. And so we are spending a lot of our time working with customers, helping them understand the fact that they have untapped data, and that's what they have to do first. If you look at the third point up there under problem, companies are constantly telling us, so we want to learn your AI and machine learning services. We want to get that, all that great insight that everyone talks about. We want to get the insights. But then we have to sort of bring them down to earth and say, you've got to do the basics first. You've got to bring your data up. The solution first step is bring the data up to the cloud, look at it. Just look at your data, get a feel for your data. Once you begin to get a feel for your data, then define the business problems you want to solve, and then set up a data lake where you bring the relevant corporate data from different repositories into the lake. Not all your data, just the data important for the problems that you actually want to solve. And then you begin the journey of AI/ML to move from descriptive to predictive to preventative to predictive analytics. So that's the sequence. And we offer a very, very simple sort of high-level architecture, right, to begin this journey. At the core is the AWS data lake, which you may have heard about, this time at reInvent or possibly before. It's a unique structure that allows you as a customer to bring in your data from a myriad data sources, with disparate formats and schemas from, for example, on-premises repositories like SCADA systems, historians, MES, your ERP systems, or from your real-time assets like your PLCs that could be Allen Bradley or Siemens or somebody else. Bring all that to one place, index it, and get it ready for the analytical work. And when you're ready for the analytical work, we have the tools. Simple tools that let you do sort of ad hoc querying, and the more complex tools that let you do the machine learning on it. So that's the very, very simple, just simple mindset. That's the basic architecture. Now we go one step deeper into that. So these are your PLCs and your sort of field assets on the left-hand side. we would work with you to layer in a sort of layer of gateways. Working with our partners, we would have industrial gateways or commercial gateways that we so bring into the picture. You're still at the edge, where we add our IoT edge services like IoT Greengrass or our IoT site-wise collector service for industrial data. And then, of course, we have to have the super important protocol conversion layer, which is actually going to convert your protocols into MQTT or OPC UA that our cloud can absorb. And partners like Kepware, we work with there's Kepware, Matricon, Ignition, lots of companies that do that kind of work. And so once the data gets up to the cloud, the first simple step is use our IoT core ingestion service or our IoT site-wise industrial ingestion and dashboarding service just to look at your data. And you want to go a little further, you can use our IoT event service, which lets you do sort of a simple sort of complex condition monitoring. So simple algorithms that let you take multiple data tags and build an algorithm to see if there's anything happening with your assets. That's sort of the first step. Get a feel for what is happening out in the field. Once you get sort of comfortable with that, next step is, let me start building a data lake. And once you start bringing data into a lake, sort of field data, mixing it up with other data, then you can use our BI tools like Amazon QuickSight to be able to look at that data and look at trend lines, both near real time, long-term trend lines, get a feel for the data some more. Once you've got to that point, now you could be ready for the next big step. You bring in the heavy artillery now, right? Bring in the big machine learning tools. Both Amazon SageMaker as well as Amazon Athena for doing a lot of sort of heavy-duty ad hoc querying as well. And then that is now when it opens up the world for you, where with the machine learning models and the query models, you can actually tackle a broad range of classic problems. I mean, from things like preventative maintenance, product optimization, all the way, if you look on the extreme right, even sort of leakage and sort of corporate theft of your possible assets out there as well. So that is the next level of the architecture. And to give you an example of that, I talked about Bayer Crop Science. If you compare what Bayer has put into place, and I won't go into all the details, it was just to give you a sort of like a pattern match here. You can see that what Bayer has put into place is very similar to the high-level architecture diagram that I showed you on the last slide, right? They've got similar services on the edge side, and they're using our analytics services, our site-wise service, our QuickSight service, and data lakes on the cloud side, with the goal of being able to visualize their data, build operational dashboards, store the data somewhere, and then be able to do some machine learning and analytics on that. So that is the approach that companies are actually putting into place today. I was talking about Bayer. The operational dashboards that they're building allow them to look across the entire processes, all the way from the field to receiving to shipping to sorting. I mean, the entire 9 yards. Single sort of dashboards that are looking at the entire sort of end-to-end flow. And this is the requirement. I mean, if you want to make sort of fundamental changes to your operations, you've got to see the overall scale of the operation and be able to see the KPIs, the OEE scores, and so on at each step of the process and also across the entire thing. Then you can say, oh, my OEE score for what sort of color sorting is actually much lower than all the other ones. Let me understand what's actually happening over there, right? That is the visibility that sort of companies need to have to be able to change the way they operate. I thought I'd give you another example, which is somewhat different. This is from the oil and gas world, where I do a lot of work. And here I just wanted to sort of bring up the idea of sort of cameras being an important IoT device. We have sort of two types of offerings that we offer customers here. Number one is what we call a standard camera and a smart gateway. So these are cameras that are just regular cameras, so industrial cameras, digital cameras, IP cameras that are bringing in data to AWS IoT. We sort of push that up into Amazon SageMaker, so build a model, and then push the model down to a gateway, which is also out in the field. And that model on the gateway is doing all the inference, looking for anomalies and things like that. The other one is smart camera, no gateway. These are specialized cameras that we are working with different camera vendors. And you take the data up to the cloud, build the models, and then push the machine learning model directly onto the camera, and all the inference of that actually happens within the camera itself. And one of my customers is actually doing this in a pretty difficult place in the North Slope of Alaska, where the temperatures are obviously extreme in the winters. They have 1,200 oil wells. These are all sort of brownfield wells. They have old technology, old valves and gauges that you have to move by hand. Unfortunately for them, they're a highly regulated industry, particularly in the Alaska North Slope, where because of the tundra, you have to meet all the regulations very, very tightly. They have to send somebody out to 1,200 wells twice a day, no matter what the weather is, to be able to physically look at the setting of those valves gauges. That is completely crazy, right? And it's a huge impact on the health and safety of those workers, productivity problem because you're losing so many man hours here. So we have been working with them, building machine learning models that can actually recognize all those valves and gauges with nobody being out there. We have specialized the C1, D2 certified gateways that can operate in the Alaskan tundra. There's pilots underway, and if they get a regulatory approval, once this thing happens, it can have a huge beneficial impact. Again, sort of change the way you operate using digital technologies. Another customer is a company called Valmet that you may or may not know. They make these massive paper production machinery. These are sort of 200-foot long machines. And if you can begin to sense particular problems that are going on the machine at the beginning end, you can actually predict the quality of the paper output at the end, and you can make sort of changes along the way. So they actually have these entire machines actually censored, and they're able to lower their costs and optimize paper quality by having an entire production process. In this case, the entire production process is in one machine. So they have it entirely censored all the way across. I think some of you are, most of you probably know that we are working very, very closely with Volkswagen. They have just begun an ambitious, very ambitious project. It's a 5-year project to reduce the overall operating costs in their entire production processes by 30%. I don't even know what the numbers are, but the numbers are in the tens of billions, right, of reduction in costs they're expecting to get. And they're doing that by working with us to digitize 122 manufacturing plants around the world, and then build a digital supply chain where there are 1,500 Tier 1 and Tier 2 suppliers who are located at about 30,000 different locations around the world, will all get connected to the DPP program, the DPP platform that Volkswagen has, and so they have a complete digital supply chain with their suppliers and their own operations. Massive, massive engagement, which will have clearly an enormous transformative effect on their operations. So that was all about changing operations. And final word on business models, right? I think we talked quite a bit about that. The biggest single change that we're seeing from a lot of companies, I gave the example of Michelin, is moving from a product sale to making an outcome-based service available. And we're seeing this in the construction industry. We work with a lot of companies in the construction industry. I mentioned the tire manufacturing area. Rolls-Royce doesn't sell jet engines anymore. They actually sell you, sort of mean time between maintenance. And so lots of companies and lots of industries are making this fundamental transition, but you can't do that unless you know the state of all your assets all the time. So that goes back to the very opening slide. That's where you have to begin. That's where you can end up. And one sort of final example of that is SKF. You think about a ball bearing, right? I mean, you wouldn't think that you would want to make ball bearing available as a product as a service, but that's exactly what SKF is doing. They've discovered that in these huge windmills, these wind farms, these windmills are 200 feet tall, and at the top of that, in your motor, there are the SKF bearings, and those bearings fail. And if those bearings fail, you've got to send somebody up there to go and identify the problem and fix the bearing. And that's obviously crazy. And so they have built the System 24 lubrication system, which is running a machine learning model that is picking up the vibration and the friction level around each of the bearings, and that is being fed directly into a machine learning model that's running on Amazon Greengrass, IoT Greengrass, and they're able to continuously lubricate that bearing surface to extend the life of the actual product. And so they offer that as sort of a number of hours of bearing use time as opposed to selling you a bearing. And with that, I think it is time for the beer. So I would like to bring Mike up here to tell you about what he's been doing in the world of beer.
Thanks, Sanjay.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, awake. So, there we go. I'm Mike Margolis. I'm a VP of Cloud Engineering at Weisberger. Weisberger, startup founded in Tel Aviv, Israel in 2011. And our goal really is to connect bars, restaurants, hotels, and pretty much anywhere where beer is served to the digital world. That's how we started, and really we started as an IoT company. Later we added other data sources, but really we started from the world of IoT from inception. In 2018, in the beginning of the year, about 2 years ago, we were acquired by Anheuser-Busch InBev. AB InBev, anyone raise of hands heard of AB InBev? Yeah, probably not, a little bit. Anyone heard of Budweiser, Corona, Stella, Lef, popular brands of beer? So AB InBev is the largest beer company in the world, manufacturing over 500 brands of beer, manufacturing actually the beer in dozens of countries and operating almost in most of the countries of the world. So we were required to help with the kind of the big data analytics journey and understanding what's going on inside the bar. Up until we started this journey together, they sold beer to the actual bars, but they didn't really know what was happening then. Somebody was drinking it at this hour of the day, what was happening on different days of the weeks. So we've joined them, and we're part of the family now, and we're helping to connect the last mile of the data. So we work with a lot of customers, big to small, and we try to engage with our customers, try to talk to them about the problems that they face. So we can talk a little bit more about, let's say, an independent bar owner. Typically maybe has one bar, maybe a sports bar in Las Vegas, in New York, or any city. And we talk about the kinds of challenges they face, and you might be surprised about how low-tech that experience is for them. So one of the biggest challenges is about gauging the market. They don't really know what's going on around them. They're trying to always stay ahead of the curve, trying to see how they can make their business succeed, but they don't actually necessarily know what's happening. They don't have concrete data or something that they can actually base their decisions off of. So, for example, is the market going up or down? Is the economy bad, or is it just my bar that's not doing so well? Is it winter versus summer that's really affecting my performance, or why actually am I now starting to do a lot better? Another thing, I can take a look at a day of the week. On Thursday, suddenly I see 50% of the revenue that I have on a typical Thursday. So what's the reason for that? Maybe something's happening, or is it everyone, or is it just me? And they really don't know how to answer these questions often. Secondly, making strategic decisions. So you might be surprised, how do they price their beers? They know how much the beer costs when they purchase it, but how do they set the price of a pint when they go into when you go into the bar and you want to buy a pint of Stella. They don't often know how to do it, so they do some market research. They walk down to the bar, down the end of the other street, and they see how much he's selling it for. They may go to a couple, but they probably can't cover the whole city. And they don't really necessarily have a good way to actually understand how to set the price of their beer. And the margins aren't necessarily great, so there's a lot of, or they want to be cheaper than someone else because that kind of bar is not necessarily the high upscale bar. They want to appeal to a different crowd. Looking at what kinds of things are trending, what beer brands are popular in my market, in Las Vegas versus in Los Angeles or versus in New York or Miami. They also need to know what kind of stock to keep. Should I order now 2 kegs or should I order 5? Is there a big sporting event coming up? How's that going to affect my business? How can I learn from the past to look at the future and how I need to operate and be efficient and not lose money? And the last thing is actually a lot of them have data. They have point of sale systems. They may have different methodologies for tracking the number of customers and patrons they have. But they don't necessarily know how to connect that data and what to do with it at the end of the day. So we came up with this concept of the connected bar, which is using technology, primarily starting with IoT and later point of sale and other technologies, to actually connect that bar and see what's going on inside and actually be able to get to some kind of deterministic understanding of what we should do as bar owners. So you might be asking yourselves, what kind of questions can we actually answer about beer? What business questions, what metrics? So the first one I'd like to talk about is about beer quality. To me, when I'm drinking, I don't want to drink my beer cold. I want it to be fresh. You know, it seems pretty straightforward, but how can you track that? You know, as a manager of a bar, you're running around here. You know when you actually purchased that keg and when you connected it. And these are the kinds of things that we can use IoT to help us understand. We actually, you know, it's a product that you're consuming. You have to clean the beer taps. You have to sanitize. You have to make sure that it's healthy. And so there's a process of sanitation that they're doing. But are we doing it on a regular basis? Are we making sure that it happens the way it should? In addition, prediction. So now looking forward and trying to understand what's happening. Like that example of Thursday that is a little bit down or a little off. Or let's say we have a sporting event another week and we want to prepare ourselves and understand how we're actually going to organize the bar. Or should I bring more wait staff? Should I have 2 bartenders or 3 bartenders? And so there are a lot of questions that they really don't know how to approach. And really, a lot of it is guesswork today. And using technology, we can actually help them understand concretely how to make decisions. One of the biggest things, waste. So I don't know if anybody has worked in the bar industry, but about 20% of beer purchased in the kegs, about 20% of the beer in the kegs is never consumed by you and me. It all goes somewhere, right? But it's not all the same. So for instance, you know, some of it is known. We want to make beer battered fish and chips. So we take some beer out of the keg, and then we go and we actually, you know that this has been wasted. We're not selling it at the end of the day. It's part of our menu. On the other hand, we could have a bartender who is selling beer and also starts drinking on the job. And then he has some friends who come in, and he wants to give his friends, you know, some beer. Or we can notice outside of operating hours that suddenly a lot of beer was consumed. And why is that happening? So yeah, maybe it's the staff. Maybe that's okay, but maybe it's not. And the last thing is optimization. So understanding really when the beer is going to run out. I don't know if any of you have ever gone to a bar, you look at the taps, you say, oh, there's five brands on tap. I want that one. And then they say, oh yeah, we ran out, I'm sorry. Bad luck. As a bar owner, that's a loss, you know, and it's disappointing for your customers. So you don't want to get to that situation. So wouldn't it be great if we could recognize that ahead of time and I could get an alert that triggers and tells me you need to order more beer, or even connect it to the system that helps me order the beer, and it can be a seamless process. So I'll give you a more concrete example. We have a very nice nightlife in Tel Aviv, and we're fortunate as Weisberger that we have a bar that we partner with very close to our offices, which is a smart bar and also kind of a playground where we do a lot of testing and innovation with them. And so we took a look at what was happening in regards to this waste. And it's actually kind of interesting. So we saw that in 1 month, 18 kegs, it's a pretty popular bar. 18 kegs, at the end of the day, no one drank, okay? Most of that waste, the 14 kegs, were coming from 2 brands, that these 2 brands, the owners said, we don't mind that, our staff is drinking, but from these 2 brands. These are the brands that maybe are, lower price point. Out of that, they were not able to account for 10 of those 14 kegs. So 4 of them, they knew that they had some menu items and they used it. They knew that they were cleaning their beer lines and some of the waste was lost in the sanitation of those lines. But 10 of them, they still couldn't account for. And so then they looked more closely at the 10 kegs and saw 8 of those kegs of waste were actually drunk off hours. If the bar closed at 11 p.m., they were drinking them at midnight. So how much was that 8 kegs actually worth to this bar owner? $3,700 a month. So, maybe that's okay. Maybe he doesn't mind that his staff is drinking. That's a benefit, right? But maybe for someone else that isn't okay, or maybe it's a little bit of exaggeration. So the ability to use IoT and technology to actually identify that and save money is something that's a game changer, even for people that up until long ago, they really just had no way to understand that or even know that it was happening. It was just, money lost, stayed on the table. So how are we actually doing it? Let's talk a little bit technical. So first of all, in a bar, typically, we have 2 main sensors at the edge. One of them is what we call a flow meter, which we work with a company called De Gamesa, that they've actually developed a flow meter that can measure the rate of flow and the amount of beer, in this case poured, and we install those on the tap lines. Secondly, we have temperature sensors that we're also wiring up into what's called the Python, which is how the beer is sent up through the taps. And these devices are then sending data back to a gateway. So we've had several revisions of our IoT. We've been doing it for a little while now. And originally, we tried to build everything ourselves. And what we learned over time is that's hard, and you can spend a lot of time and effort doing it. And so we partnered with others who specialize in specific aspects of that. And one of them, Rigado, who is a partner of ours, produces gateways that they already out of the box knew how to support AWS IoT with Greengrass at the edge. They know how to connect to AWS IoT Cloud. And in addition, they support LTE and Wi-Fi, but we mostly push the data up through LTE into the cloud. And so we worked with them to connect these sensors. And we found that in our initial testing of this solution going wireless, that there was a little bit of trouble, because bars are a little bit of a noisy environment. We have patrons with Bluetooth on their phones. You can typically have different types of equipment, walls, obstructions. Sometimes the cellars are located in one place, taps in another place. It starts getting very, very complex in terms of trying to make sure that all of your connectivity is there and continuing to hold the data integrity. So for us, data integrity is key. I can't calculate waste or understand how to provide metrics and statistics to my customers that are accurate, then it's game over. So we also work with a company called Wirepass that have developed IP around a protocol that actually helps us with making sure everything's connected in a self-healing way, even self-provisioning with those gateways from the sensor to the gateway, and also know how to make sure to route the traffic. They can route from one sensor to another sensor to another sensor to the gateway, not just each sensor to the gateway. In addition, they can do dense areas. They can actually put about 1,000 devices in 1 cubic meter, which is pretty incredible. And we chose to work with them because in our initial testing with Bluetooth, we saw that it was not as smooth as you might imagine, and definitely in the bar environment. And last but not least, originally when we started, we were sending technicians to install. It's a complex install. We had a wired solution, and you had to run wires all over the place. And so when we went wireless, and as time goes on, and you've probably seen it with other things, I've saw it with my cable TV. I got a new box and just hook it up and use an app and install it yourself. Don't send a technician, which has a lot of impact on the operating costs. So we wanted to take a DIY as well, so we could put, for someone who feels comfortable doing that, the installation in their hands. So how does all that come together from a technical and architecture perspective? So if you're looking on the left side here, we've got the edge. We have our sensors, and they're connecting to each other or connecting directly to the gateway using the Wirepass protocol. Our Rigado gateway that actually is running Greengrass on it. And so they're handing off that data into Greengrass, where then we can use Lambda functions to actually do diagnostics there And we're looking at pushing some additional ML in there around some of this, recognizing sanitation and events where we may need to remove some of the data because it's not actual beer. It's, someone is cleaning the line, so they push a lot of liquid through there, and it's a lot of flow, but it's not actually beer. So we need to take that out of the equation. So a lot of that we're doing in batch processing. Today, we want to push it maybe closer to the edge. So we don't even send that data to the cloud. So the data is sent over MQTT into AWS IoT Core. From there, we actually are sending the data. The Wirepass protocol works with a protocol called protobuf, which is binary and very efficient, which saves us on our LTE. But at the end of the day, we want to work in a format like JSON that's readable and we can use once we're in the cloud. We don't really care as much about that efficiency. So we convert it with the Lambda function, and then we push it into a Kinesis stream, and then just stream that data all the time, the raw data, into our IoT pipeline. And our IoT pipeline kind of looks like this. Some of you may have seen this kind of architecture before. It's called a Lambda architecture. And it kind of serves two different use cases, what we call batch processing and near real-time processing. So if we want to do heavy lifting and look at a lot of big aggregate metrics over large periods of time, over the course of a year, we want to take measurements and try to create new metrics from that. So we need to do some heavy lifting with batch processing. And for that, we use EMR. But you can't run batch processing every minute. You have to kind of time it, and it takes a while, and those jobs can take, sometimes 30 minutes to run. And so that's great for certain things, but it's not great if, for instance, when I install in a bar, I want to make sure everything's connected. So what do? We do a pouring test. We just, see the beers coming through, and we want to see that it's actually being recorded. For that, you need kind of a near real-time solution. And for that, we have our speed layer. And the speed layer is pushing data into Aurora, and we're able to look at that data. Also, in the case of a bar owner wants to take a look at, up into the last few minutes, how much beer have I served? If he's looking at a chart over the course of a month, that's a batch type application. But if he wants to see what's happening right now, that's a speed layer. So we have kind of both of these complementing, and we're using a set of different types of data stores that are relevant to the application. And then we have an applicative layer that we built with some microservices and ECS that basically know how to serve up the data and push it out, which at the end of the day, the bottom line for our customers, they don't really care about all that architecture stuff, is being able to actually gain those insights, answer those questions that we talked about in the beginning. And so we want to serve it up to them in a dashboard that's easy to understand. And we actually are able to give insight not just to what's happening to them, because we're working with a lot of different bars. And we can look at clustering those types of bars. We can look clustering type of bar. We can look at geographical proximity. We can look at things that are also clustering by similar revenue types of bar. A big bar versus a small bar. They're not going to operate the same. They're not trying to actually necessarily do the same things. And so we do some clustering. We look at the different types of bars like you. And we're able to present a picture without identifying who the others are, but picture of how they are actually optimizing, and should they be serving half pint sizes more than a third of a pint, a half liter versus a third liter, and different types of things that they can help take business decisions about how they operate their bar, and at the end of the day, save a lot of money. So that's basically what we're doing, and I think we'll open it up to Q&A now.
Yeah. In fact, just one note, for those of you who might have more interest in going into the IoT sessions, our VP of IoT, Dirk, is on the IOT207-R1. You want to get deeper into our analytics services. For those of you who have some interest in the whole sort of camera thing I talked about, that's 311. And then tomorrow I'm doing another deep dive into the architecture stuff, which is 328. So with that, we'll thank you all for actually attending, and if there are any questions, please use the microphones in the two aisles, and don't forget to submit your survey results on the mobile app. Okay, thank you very much.